from the dust of empires. New forces rise. New ideas propel us forward. (455 AD) at the gates of the Imperial Palace. Geiserik, known as the Spear King, chief of a tribe of Germanic warriors, the Vandals. They've crushed Roman armies in North Africa. Now, they're after the riches of Rome itself. Trapped inside the palace, the Empress, Licinia Eudoxia, daughter of a Christian convert, widow of a murdered emperor. She and her children are the last of Rome's ruling family. The imperial capital is under attack. Ruling a fifth of the world's population has stretched the empire to breaking point.
Like a supernova, the empires we've seen on this planet have collapsed under their own weight. A great mass of energy. There's nothing brighter in the sky. There was certainly nothing brighter and more powerful than the Roman Empire until it wasn't.
Rome, the world's first megacity. Population, 1 million. The most modern city in the world. Now in ruins, an empire in meltdown.
When you think about the Roman Empire and the complexity of the system that failed, it's incredibly frightening. A system that could create the best army in the world, that could unite the entire Mediterranean region. The idea that a system like that can fragment and break apart, it's apocalyptic.
Geiserik's men wreak havoc. The Roman Empire will never recover.
When you see that kind of horror and you're stuck and trapped inside this city, you start running out of options very quick. You can't run, you can't hide, you can't defeat this force. They will rape, they will pillage, and they will plunder.
But the Vandals are no savages. They're educated and skilled in warfare, thanks to the Romans.
By the time the Vandals arrived in Rome, they'd been living in the Roman Empire for a long, long time. These are people who probably spoke Latin, who had served in armies alongside of Roman soldiers. They'd been mercenaries. They'd engaged in trade in the Roman Empire.
Geiserik has been fighting the Romans since his teens. Now, he's in reach of the ultimate prize. Eudoxia. Worth more to the Vandal chief than gold. Having the Empress as his hostage will bring him prestige. Eudoxia will spend the next 7 years at Geiseric's side. Her daughter, forced to marry his son, the Empress of Rome, enslaved by a barbarian. The Roman Empire lasted for 5 centuries. At its height, it ruled over 60 million people and 2 million square miles. As it disintegrates, barbarian tribes seize their opportunity. Angles and Saxons push into Britain. Franks sweep across Gaul, giving their name to modern France. Visigoths seize what is now Spain.
When power collapses at any time, anywhere, it creates a vacuum, by definition. Others come running in. Territory gets grabbed up. Ideas are repudiated. The Romans learned it. We don't know who's going to be next.
With the collapse of Rome, Europe reverts to a dark age of war, famine, and savagery. Many essentials of Roman life lost for centuries. The technology to build aqueducts, the use of coins, in some areas, even writing. Rome loses 95% of its population. London is abandoned.
The drama of Rome suggests that civilization does not progress in a straight line towards more prosperity, more order, more law, more technology. It shows us the picture of amazing things being achieved by the Greeks and the Romans, and then those things being lost again.
With the fall of Rome, Europe will fragment and stay divided for 1,500 years. But 2 new forces emerge, key to the story of mankind. From the frozen north, the Vikings. From the sun-baked south, the Arabs. The Arabian Desert, 1,400 years ago. Buried deep beneath, gold. It'll help build a new civilization, founded on a new religion, Islam. The Mahad al-Dahab mine, worked by 1,000 slaves. Owned by Al-Hajjaj al-Bahizi. From the same tribe as the Prophet Muhammad. Already a mining tycoon, soon worth his weight in gold.
Gold is an amazing metal. It's easy to work with, it doesn't tarnish, and it's so beautiful that it seems to symbolize wealth and royalty by its very existence.
All the gold ever mined comes from outer space. From a time almost 4 billion years ago, known as the Heavy Bombardment. Asteroids carrying traces of gold rain down on the Earth. $14 million times rarer than iron. All the gold ever mined would fill just 3 Olympic swimming pools. Extracting gold in 7th century Arabia is dangerous work. Tunnels, propped up by simple wooden struts. With each blow, a worker can strike it rich. Or dig his own grave. Cave-in at a gold mine in the Arabian desert. Owner Al-Hajjaj Al-Bahizi risks his life to save his men and his investment. This mine will produce 50 tons of gold, worth $2 billion today. A gold rush sparks a boom in trade and a new chapter for mankind. From the trading center of Mecca, a charismatic leader emerges, the Prophet Muhammad, and a new religion. In 20 years, Islam unites the warring tribes of Arabia.
It was a particular genius of the burgeoning Islamic State to use that gold to fund a massive army that was able to push beyond the Arabian Peninsula to create a new kind of empire, a distinctly Islamic empire.
From Mecca, in modern-day Saudi Arabia, Islam spreads across North Africa and into Europe, dominating lands once controlled by the Romans. A new civilization reaches into Spain and builds a new city. Cordoba. Home to a remarkable inventor, Abbas ibn Firnas. Astronomer, engineer, inventor. He's invented a water clock, a planetarium, a magnifying glass. Now he'll risk his life for a new invention. 1,000 years before the Wright brothers, he wants to fly. An extraordinary experiment in an extraordinary city. Cordoba is home to 500,000 Muslims, Christians, and Jews. In Europe's dark ages, a beacon of tolerance and learning. 37 libraries, the knowledge of mankind, much of it rescued from ancient Greece and Rome.
What one wonders about is if Islamic scientists had not played this role of nursemaid to science, how would we have gotten here? Because in the West, we had lost that with our dark ages. How would science have survived in the West if it had not been for the Islamic scholars.
Arabs take a great leap forward in astronomy, engineering, medicine. They create algebra and simplify math. With the numbers 0 to 9, still known as Arabic numerals. Ibn Firnas is fascinated by the laws of flight and has built his own flying machine.
What an extraordinary thing to try to do. This crazy guy was willing to jump off a building to improve the state of human knowledge.
By guiding these wings up and down, I will fly. If all goes well, after soaring for a time, I will return safely.
Accounts of the time report.
He attached a couple of wings to his body, and from a great height flung himself into the air. He flew a considerable distance, as if he had been a bird.
But without a tail, he can't control his descent. He'll suffer back pain for the rest of his life, but he enters the historical records, the first human to fly.
This willingness to risk life and limb for knowledge is one of the things that has really brought humans to where we are today. We wouldn't be here if people weren't constantly willing to push and experiment and really risk everything just for a hunch.
50 years later, 2,500 miles away, another Arab pushing the boundaries of knowledge. Ahmed ibn Fadlan, diplomat, chronicler, devout Muslim. His mission? To seek out new trade routes. In Russia, he makes contact with people who will dominate Northern Europe, the Vikings. He records.
I have never seen more perfect physical specimens. They are big men with white bodies, tall as palm trees. But they're also the filthiest of God's creatures. They drink alcohol, Prison Terry. Everyone carries an axe, like wild asses.
Their appearance to Ibn Fadlan must have been shocking because they were so unabashed and promiscuous and completely unaware of sort of a sense of privacy and properness that Ibn Fadlan would have carried with him.
From their native Scandinavia, these Vikings had journeyed 1,200 miles by sea and river before settling in western Russia. This country will be named after them. The Vikings call themselves the Rus, men who row.
We tend to think of the Vikings as these brutal and frightening people, but they helped open up the world. They helped connect the world in ways that had not been connected before, and we do owe a debt to them for that.
The Viking trade network stretches across Central and Northern Asia. What they offer their visitor is a rare luxury in Arabia, fur. In exchange, Arabian gold.
Imagine two people who cannot communicate verbally, and yet they both come with something that is of value in their culture. The exchange is made, and this is what has created trade across every culture and every part of the world.
Ibn Fadlan has arrived at a momentous time for these Vikings. Their chief has died. It's time for a funeral.
They told me before cremating their chieftain, they place him in a grave for 10 days while they make his funeral garments. Surprisingly, he had not yet begun to stink.
The dead Viking is destined for Valhalla, the legendary resting place of chiefs and warriors. He will not go alone.
The chief's son asked his father's slave girls, who will die with him? One step forward. Once she had done this, there was no backing down.
The dead chief's favorite slave girl chooses to join her master, believing that in Valhalla she'll become his wife. But first, she must die. On the banks of Russia's Volga River, a pagan people who will dominate much of Christian Europe, Vikings prepare their chief for the afterlife. One of his slave girls has volunteered to be cremated with him, so she can enter Valhalla with her master. Ibn Fadlan, an Arab chronicler, writes the first surviving account of a Viking funeral.
They took the dead man and carried him up to the ship where they laid him on a quilt. A woman issued instructions. They called her the Angel of Death. The slave girl was given an intoxicating drink. Broad-bladed dagger and thrust it in and out between the girl's ribs, while two men throttled her until she died.
The Viking chief takes his final journey on his prized possession, his longship.
We tend to think of these guys as barbarians, but Vikings were extraordinary explorers. The Vikings were on the cutting edge of human exploration at the beginning of the medieval world.
The key to Viking exploration, their longships. built with overlapping oak planks, riveted along the keel. They are strong, but quick. Powered by sail and oars, some can reach 20 knots, good speed for a modern racing yacht.
The Viking longship is an incredible piece of military technology. It could cross vast open ocean, but then navigate a tiny inlet or river. And when the Vikings came to attack, the longship was fast, it was stealthy, sneak up unseen, unheard, and make their attack with incredibly devastating force.
The Vikings launched raids along the coasts of Britain, Ireland, France, and Spain. "30,000 Vikings settle in Iceland in 60 years. And they set up colonies in Greenland.
The big crisis in the Viking civilization was farmland. So the Vikings would set off and find new farmlands. And Greenland was one of the big, real estate promotions. They called it Greenland to get people to move there. It's not actually green.
From Greenland, they'll push on to North America, the first Europeans, 500 years before Columbus. By 1000 AD, Vikings settle among many of the communities they once attacked. Novgorod in Russia, Kiev in the Ukraine, Rouen in France, York in England, Dublin in Ireland, all transformed into cities by the Vikings. They convert to Christianity, replacing pagan shrines with great churches, reinventing themselves as European knights. In Russia, they form a dynasty of princes. In France, they're known as Norsemen and rule Normandy. The most famous of them, William the Conqueror, invades Britain and becomes King of England. As rulers of Christian Europe, the Vikings will be on the front line in a clash of civilizations, the Crusades. As the Vikings helped lift Europe from its dark age, other explorers create an entirely new civilization. On an island in the Pacific Ocean, mankind is ever restless.
The urge to create, indeed the urge to glorify, no matter where we are in the world, no matter what our resources are, no matter even what tools are available, that urge is universal.
Living in total isolation, these people will build some of the most iconic statues in the world. Easter Island in the Pacific Ocean. Polynesians carve statues from rock with Stone Age tools. Mankind, the builder.
It's extraordinary because they were made so many centuries ago, and yet they capture the imagination. They startle us because they're so mysterious. With all our technology, the statues of Easter Island still awe us.
A monument to an ancestral chief, like the man who first led them here, Hotu Matua. Pioneer, savior, founder of a civilization. Driven from his native land by tribal warfare, he's taken a few dozen of his people on an epic journey.
Urartu must have been an incredible leader to convince this group of people to follow him into the unknown. He must have had this great sense of hope and optimism, which fortunately for him turned out to be well-founded.
Without charts or compasses, he has traveled 2,500 miles to one of the remotest places on Earth. A volcanic island, half the size of Detroit, in the vast emptiness of the Pacific Ocean.
I've sailed across the Pacific, and I know how big that ocean is. It's huge. You're down in the canoe, you can only see 4 or 5, maybe 6 miles. You know, you can't see that far. So you're on the sea level. If you sail past an atoll, it's only tree high. If you're 10 miles away, you've missed it. So actually putting a real needle in a haystack, you're going to find that needle before you're going to find Easter Island.
The key to crossing the ocean, an instinct for navigation.
The Polynesians were so amazing. Their ability to navigate, their understanding of the stars, of celestial navigation was unparalleled. And they used it to spread over almost the entire Pacific, all the way to New Zealand.
On Easter Island, entirely alone, they'll create a unique civilization, surrounded by statues of their ancestral gods.
If you think about it, virtually all of the great monuments of the past were built for a spiritual purpose, as if satisfying the human need to reach out to the afterlife. And Easter Island reveals that urge to celebrate, to commemorate epic monuments that are still impressive thousands of years later and will be thousands of years from now.
Known as Moai, the tallest is 33 feet high and weighs 82 tons. As heavy as the space shuttle.
Humans work so hard. We never just settle down and happily farm and live. We're always building something, exploring something, doing something that's a challenge that's bigger than ourselves.
Legend says the statues walk magically into place. In reality, they are dragged over land. The forests provide all the building materials the islanders need. Palm trees 80 feet tall become canoes and huts. And rollers to transport the moai. To lift them into place, wooden levers and ropes made from tree fiber.
Nothing like these statues, and they were made with such primitive technology. We're fascinated by them, with these beautiful eyes staring out at you. It captures something, I think, in our hearts.
The Easter Islanders build 900 moai, protecting their isolated community. But in doing so, they hasten their own downfall.
Unfortunately, their protection didn't last. Once the forests were cut down, you had an ecological disaster on Easter Island. Once the last trees were gone and they couldn't make canoes anymore, their paradise became a prison.
Religion. The most potent force in the story of mankind. It has built civilizations and destroyed them. As the Easter Islanders pay homage to their ancestral gods, on the other side of the planet, holy warriors destroy those of a different faith. In the Middle East, Jerusalem, a city under siege. Inside its walls, pandemonium. Outside, 12,000 men, intent on butchery. Crusaders. Spearheading the attack, Tancred de Hauteville, a Norman knight descended from Vikings, filled with bloodlust.
So many people have died in the name of religion. Wars fought over religious belief have spilled so much blood. But I think of all the wars fought over religion, the Crusades belong in their own category.
The slaughter here resonates to this day. Tancred de Hauteville, a Christian knight on a mission from God. In the Holy Land, waging war on Islam. By the end of the 11th century, 600 years after the fall of Rome, the two religions are great rivals. Christianity dominates in the west and north, Islam in the east and south. Determined to curb the advance of Islam, the Pope calls on Christians to take up arms. Their target, the holy city of Jerusalem.
On the eve of the Crusades, Jerusalem under Muslim rule was actually a hotbed of creativity and interreligious dialogue. There were Jews, there were Christians, there were Muslims. For the most part, they lived in relative harmony.
But each lays claim to the city. Jews revere it as their ancient capital. Muslims know it as Al-Quds, the holy. From here, the Prophet Muhammad journeyed to heaven. And for Christians, Christ was crucified here.
It's amazing when you go to Jerusalem, if you just stop for a second, you'll see that these people actually have more in common than they have that are differences. They are the sons and daughters of Abraham.
To all who join the crusade, Pope Urban offers eternal salvation, declaring,
"The Lord beseeches you to destroy that vile race from the lands of our friends. All who die by the way shall have immediate remission of sins."
A knight could sin as much as he liked, and simply by going to the Holy Land, he had been given forgiveness by the Pope. He had been given his passport to heaven. He could win fame, he could win glory, and he could come back with booty. It is one of the most shameful undertakings ever embarked upon by our species.
With absolution assured, nothing holds back the Crusaders. One records joyfully.
Piles of heads, hands, and feet were to be seen in the streets of the city. It was a just and splendid judgment of God that this place should be filled with the blood of the unbelievers.
If I have a belief system that literally says, God tells me I must slaughter anyone who wants to stop me from being here, it would allow you to justify any horrific act you take at that point.
Tancred hesitates. Decides to ransom the Muslims and stop killing them. He gives them his standard, a signal to others that they're under his protection. At the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, he prays.
Having a singular belief system where I've deferred responsibility to God can allow me to do brutal things on a battlefield. But I think when it gets quieter, when the images come back into the mind, that has effect on a human being.
Returning, he finds his captives slaughtered behind his back by other crusaders.
The Crusades were as bad as it gets. Remember that these guys embraced the same God, many of the same beliefs, same prophets, and yet the streets ran deep with their blood and their brothers. It shows the extraordinary power of ideas to take hold of people's minds and drive them to commit acts of great sacrifice and love on the one hand, but also acts of tremendous barbarity and hatred on the other. It's the double-edged sword of religious belief.
The Crusades will continue for 2 centuries and cost more than 1 million lives. But mankind's greatest hours come. We harness new riches and new powers. Build new civilizations in Europe and Asia. Rich in invention, culture, and art. A new chapter in the story of mankind.